Recording in progress.
I'd like to call the meeting to order. If you can stand for the pledge, please. Cameron, you all set with roll call?
Yes, I am.
Resolved that the Board of Education approve the agenda for the December 19th, 2022 regular Board of Education meeting. Can I have a motion, please? Shelley first.
Second.
Second, Wayne. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 7-0. And we're going to, next part of the agenda is the Board of Education Spotlight. So Mr. DeBarry will take over that section.
All right, thank you. We are very, very, very excited this evening to recognize our students at the elementary level who participated in our holiday greeting card contest. So we have a video that we're going to display here, and then I will call up all of the students and recognize them. While Mrs. Turner is pulling up the video, I wanted to point out that approximately 50 entries were received by the district, and we narrowed down those 50 entries to 10. There was a panel of judges that did that work, and then, as many of you know, community members went through and identified the top card that will be utilized on our district's holiday card that will be sent out on Friday. And so we want to thank all those families and individuals that participated in the voting and the polling of this awesome event, and we're certainly excited to showcase and share this beautiful artwork from all of these students. So we'll watch the quick video, and then we'll call all of our students up and recognize them individually. As you can see from that video, it certainly was very difficult narrowing down to our final winner. As you can see, these students are very creative, and I only wish that I could be as creative as they are. So again, nice job. We'll start with the finalists. So we're going to call you up, and then Mr. Davidson, one of our board members, will be here to have a picture taken, and then I believe Mrs. Buckshot is going to take everyone out into the hall to also do some individual photos as well. So we're going to ask you to come up in the front here. And the first student that we're going to recognize is finalist Avon Adams from Reynolds Elementary School.
Oh, there we go. Somewhere. Awesome job. We're just going to have you stand over here and we'll get a picture of it. I'll give you your certificate. You can hold it.
Our next student is Clayton Bosco from Messenger Elementary. Come on up, Clayton. We have Abigail Jung from Eldon Elementary. Next, we have Kate Call from Eldon Elementary. Next, we have Vincent Mirakian from McNamara Elementary.
Great job.
Next, Allison Simpson from Reynolds Elementary. Also from Reynolds Elementary, Everett Simpson. Next, from Van Buren Elementary, we have Matthew Tatum. From Palmer Elementary School, Noel Whalen. And the winner from Reynolds Elementary School, Lyra Hoban.
It matches your card. Right in the front. Yep.
Putin, get lacy close, guys. And then remember, you hold your certificates up like this so I can see them.
Show them the right way.
Good job. And I need big smiles. Awesome. Thanks, guys. So I'm gonna take you guys all outside, take your picture, okay?
Awesome job.
We're at this door.
You guys do
Again, congratulations to all of our students. Thank you for your support.
So we didn't have this up on the Board of Ed Spotlight, but I wanted to recognize Mr. DeBarber. On December 8th, he successfully defended his dissertation, and he now has a doctorate in education, so he is now officially Dr. DeBarber, so congratulations. Okay, moving on to the next part of the agenda is correspondence, board activities, and committee reports. And on, let's see, December 6th, some of us attended the Farrar Law Firm breakfast briefing, which was a very talk-filled morning with a lot of hot topics in education right now. Shelley and I attended that. I'm not sure what you have prepared. I have a couple things with each one, so you can kind of tag team and go through that. Some major topics, student discipline, the counseling and interviewing with students, the confidentiality. One of the major topics that came up were the use of videos and what's considered like a student record and who's allowed to view those videos, and especially more than the student of interest is on there, the process for that. Some contradictory information having to do with like transgender. You can't reveal their transgender student or status of a student, but then there's some conflict with, you know, if it's significant health issues, you're supposed to contact the parents. So there's a lot of stuff going on right now in the legal world with that. Another part is opting out of curriculum. There's some narrow exceptions in New York State, HIV and AIDS, animal dissection, and for religious reasons. They did discuss books, that the board is supposed to approve those, which we do, but you have to be very careful about not keeping in mind the First Amendment rights of students. And if there's a challenge, there's a whole process that we should have in policy. I know that we do have a challenge, but I'm not sure if we do the last part where they said that there should be a board resolution for accepting or rejecting a committee's recommendation. I'm not sure if that's part of the process. Joe, do we have that here or no?
I do not believe we've we can certainly, because that would be a part of the regulation, so we can update the regulations to make sure that's in there for the final use.
Yeah, because I'm not sure if we did that with it, so just raise a question. That's why it's good to go to these things to see all the different changes and make sure that we have everything set. Another part, a big topic was the pupil rights amendments, the PPRA, and a lot about surveys and federal surveys, and there's some hot topics that you're not supposed to ask unless you get parental permission for. And they talked about the differences between federal surveys and local surveys, and how we need to, if our district employees are going to be giving those out, make sure that they're reviewed by legal to make sure that those 8 protected areas, and I'm not sure what process we have here.
We do check, and I believe we also have a board policy that outlines those same requirements.
And I'm not sure what our policy is, but one thing I did notice that they had in the booklet was they to be careful about using the policy from the U.S. Department of Education. I'm not sure what language our policy is, so that may be one that the policy committee can go and review and take a peek at. And then another one was the FOIL for both compliance. There's a lot more information being FOILed, parent groups demanding transparency, and went over the basic rules and the exemptions to the rules and what can be FOILed and anything that's asked for. We don't have to develop new documents for FOIL. If the documents exist, then we get the information out, but we don't have to develop documents to satisfy FOIL requests. It goes down to like lesson plans and all that kind of stuff. Technically, you know, in our curriculum, we know that that can be looked at, especially by the families. And we also, with any information that we're giving out, we have to keep in mind the FERP, or the Federal, Family for Education Rights and Privacy Act. I don't know if you have anything else to add. It was 2.5 hours.
Yes,
It was a lot
and
of
it was
information.
jam-packed, and it was great, and all the things that I hit, you hit, so thank you. But it was a great 2.5 hours on a lot of information.
I enjoy going to those because there's so much changing all the time, and just especially being on the policy committee,
Yes.
making sure that we're keeping up to date with everything, and like looking even with the PPRA and seeing, you know, comparing it to the U.S. Department of Education. Do we use that language, or is there something else out there? I don't know. My other policy members note to look forward between now and our next meeting in February. On December 7th, we had a special Board of Education meeting. We went right into executive session for personnel issue. And then on December 9th, we had a building visit at McNamara Elementary.
I attended. It's always a pleasure to go into the buildings, and McNamara is always welcoming and fun and exciting. Jen Holmeyer brings a lot of energy to her building, and the kids just really enjoy seeing her when we were going throughout the tour. A lot of great things on the walls the kids had created or made for the holiday, so that was fun. And Jen did go into a little bit of information with us about their classes, where a lot of their classes, they're no longer, I want to say, inclusive anymore, where they're breaking kids apart. Am I saying that right? So they're not being pulled out for services?
So it's essentially it's more inclusive, and instead of having 1 or 2 sections of integrated co-teaching within a grade level, they actually have integrated co-teaching within all of the sections of that grade level, so that students are more heterogeneously grouped within the classrooms, and we're not creating homogeneous groups of students that have all integrated co-teaching on an IEP. So certainly a positive transition that hopefully will turn into changes and adjustments in some of the other buildings as well.
Thanks for the help on that. So she was anxious to share that with us, and it's going over very well in the building. And I know there were some other members, but it's always fun to be in the buildings, see what's going on.
My favorite part was going into the UPK classroom and being taken by the hand over the table, because it was lunchtime, to inspect and share everything that was in the lunchbox for that day. That was so adorable.
humble brag, but Joe and I got hugs. I don't know if you did, but no, it was great going into the art classrooms and seeing what they were doing there. They were doing some drawings and kind of animation stuff. It was really interesting. I can't remember what he called it, but it was, I think it was a Friday, right? Or wasn't it? Something, he's like every Friday they do the animation. And yeah, it was great to go back and see all the changes. I haven't been in there in a couple of years, and the offices are great, the spaces are great. It was a lot of fun to see the kids in action.
It was a great visit, and the kids were very, very welcoming and happy to share any answers that we had questions to, and they just seemed so excited in their learning process, and it was just a fun visit.
And then prior to the meeting tonight, we had a communications committee meeting, and we covered a lot. Let's see, Wayne or Shelley?
I can start and
Okay.
pitch in. We first started off, Sarah gave us an update on a social media update. And she let us know that the Twitter accounts that are being used, primarily the administrators and the teachers are putting a lot of information on the Twitter pages. She said there are some families that do post on those Twitter accounts, but primarily it's admins and teachers. She said the Facebook page is extremely strong. There are a lot of new followers. Instagram tends to be a little bit more predominant with students and the different groups at Baker. And she gave a reference of two of those such groups. The Baker's News has an account, Instagram account, as well as the Bees Band. So a lot of information being shared out through those. Let's see. She did want to share that, like was previously stated, the holiday card, all the voting was done through the Facebook page. So a lot of transparency with that. And then I don't know if anybody else wants to.
We just talked a lot about information that we want to put on the Board of Education webpage in regards to becoming a member of the board and what it entails. So we had a lot of good discussion on that. Yeah, that's you go.
So Joe will be sharing out in the Friday letter the link to the Google Drive where we started working on this page. There's a hidden page right now to add to the website regarding the Board of Education. And we were just throwing around some other ideas, getting, meeting dates, the commitment besides just the regular meetings and committee meetings, agenda plannings, retreats, work sessions, special meetings, superintendent evaluations, informal board evaluations, self-evaluations, a lot of getting all that information out there so people who would like to run know what's on there more than just the regular meetings. Also, talked about getting the date for orientation, new board member orientation up there so people understand about that. The required mandated training for the state, getting all of that information up there. We also talked about the roles of president, vice president, and superintendents. A lot of people don't understand the difference in who's responsible for what. We talked about putting a link, getting our board manual that we did a few years ago, getting that link up there. Explains, a lot of what the board's responsibilities are in regards to, fiscal accountability, student achievement accountability, policy development, all of those things. Let's see. We also talked a little bit about communications out to stakeholders and what other school districts do. Sarah's involved with, her responsibilities, communications from the district side. She can put information out for us, but as for developing it, as a board, we need to decide how we want to do that. Some districts do it in the newsletter, have a section for the Board of Education statements or updates that are district related at our level, what our responsibilities are. So she's going to share some schools with us so we can take a peek at some of those ideas. Let's see. She also talked about the capital project. There's going to be a special 4-page hide that's going to come out in February, and it's going to be in full color, talking about the upcoming projects. And we'll also, for lunch and learn right after break, that's when they're going to start the communication campaign for that. they're gonna have a spot on the website for the new slot about the capital project that's always gonna be there, and they're gonna generate questions and answers and try and get some of those questions, and they're gonna pull some from the Lunch and Learn, and people can submit questions, and they'll develop a Q&A about the capital project to get the information out there prior to the vote. They'll talk to the messenger and get the information out to the TV news stations, which those typically come out right before the votes in May. And then also talked about the plan when Sarah's out, you know, how the different parts of the communication are gonna get done.
That's everything I had.
Like we had a lot of information in these 2 meetings that you and I had this week and last week. Does anyone else have anything else that they attended or want to talk about? There's a lot of events going on, you know, the holidays and concerts and stuff across the district.
I attended last Wednesday evening, the 7th grade or the Ray 7th grade concert for the orchestra, chorus and band, and it was just a great feeling just to be back in the auditorium and have so many students be able to perform, and to hear all sections of it. We've got a lot of talent at such a young age in all of the building, you know, specifically 7th grade. So it was great to be there, and it was a lot of fun.
Going along, you mentioned earlier the Bees Band's Instagram page. They were the official house band for the SU basketball game on Saturday. They were on TV here and there. At halftime, they even had like a good 20-30 seconds, and the announcer was like, and this is the Baldwinsville High School Band, and it was pretty cool. And then on December 31st, they'll be performing again when Syracuse takes on Boston College, so check it out.
All right, we have a bunch of upcoming events and meetings which are all listed. I'm not going to go through that. And next up is our student board report. So Azan.
This one's not as chaotic as the last time, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. Okay, to start off, I definitely say this like every meeting, but the school year's progressing like wildly quickly. So like 15 weeks is this Friday, which as a student, again in their senior years, kind of crazy. As was just stolen from me, the pep band was at SU, and they will continue to go on and do more and more. They're good. I mean, if you watched any of it, like and just talking to the kids, I don't know, it's exciting. Always is. But whatever. I mean, I'm not going to take it personally. Tomorrow night at halftime during the boys varsity basketball game in the gym at Baker, there's a whole bunch of plaques for all the section championships, so on and so forth. And boys and girls varsity lacrosse team, they will have their plaque unveiled tomorrow night. Something new going on at Baker, we have what they're calling the Beautiful Bees Boutique. If you use your imagination a little bit, it's just, like I walked into it today, and it's kind of just this room, and there's so much stuff in there, like anything from jewelry to like towels, and then like winter jackets, clothing, all sorts of things. It's kind of like the Be Full food pantry, but like the clothing version of it. So there's a group of students, I think Mrs. McRobbie is playing a large part in that one, and it's just students can donate lightly used or new, we call them clothing items, and students that are in need of such things, that's just another opportunity. It's just students are taking a large part in that one, which they also did for Be Full in the beginning, which is just exciting. And there was a lot of stuff in there when I walked in there today. Yeah, so that was exciting to hear about. Outside of Baker, a lot of the elementary schools are continuing doing like food drives and such. Mr. Coughlin at Eldon wanted to note that all of the stuff that they gathered, so non-wrapped gifts and non-perishable foods, they brought to the collecting area, and the elementary students got an opportunity to like see all the stuff that they collected and take a tour of it. I can imagine that there was a lot of stuff in there. They're also continuing to use the Positivity Project this time to spread kindness and to cheer. At Reynolds, the Student Council made holiday greeting cards for the Heritage, which typically hosts, the members are typically those that have Alzheimer's and dementia. At Ray, there's 4 students that are moving onto the regional qualifier round of the spelling bee. That was definitely never me. Spelling's like not my thing, but whatever. Their student council is held a holiday drive for the Baldwinsville Christmas Bureau. And then this week, similarly to Baker, they're doing a Spirit Week. Theirs includes things like Toasty Tuesday and Couch Potato Day. I don't really know what either of those is, but like, I mean, fun for them. And then to wrap it up, at Palmer, Mr. Ewing, I think, wanted to like have me mess up here. So Pager Pajama Rama raised $1,000. It's going to Golisano Children's Hospital. And like, he just told me that that's a lot of money. I guess the tickets were like $1 a piece or something similar to that. So $1,000 is quite a bit from an elementary school. So, yeah.
Thank you. Definitely not chaotic, as you said. Having that thrown at you a couple meetings ago, you've done a really nice job connecting with the other buildings besides Baker to share that information out to the community. We appreciate it.
So you don't know what Toasty Tuesday is, but what's a pajama rama?
I love how you just like throw these things. Like I don't know. Sounds exciting. I mean, the elementary kids loved it.
Is it just like a pajama
You
day?
could-
Yeah, it was a pajama day, so all the kids dressed up in their coziest jammies and enjoyed the day, especially with the 2-hour delay in the snow, so it was nice.
Yes, my kids participated in the pajama rama. They enjoyed it. I tried to go to work that way, but it didn't quite work out the same. I got a little pushback, so I'm trying to institute that in my office.
And we can talk to you about what a couch potato is. It includes a TV guide and a very fully loaded potato. Okay.
Jen, I forgot to mention, last Friday, Durkee Junior High had their, the 8th and 9th grade dance. It was a lot of fun. I actually volunteered for the PTA. I did get permission from my daughter to do that, and she was good with me doing that. But all the young women and young gentlemen were, you know, they all looked great, and they just had a great time, and they were jam-packed in that gym the entire 2 hours that they were there. And I know for the 9th graders, I'm not sure about the 8th graders, probably that was their first opportunity to have a school dance since the pandemic. So it was a great opportunity to see everybody there. They all had a great time.
Are we all set with the report outs? A lot of fun things going on right now. And again, yes, I believe that age group, they haven't experienced that except my son's grade, and he did go and have a good time. Okay, next up on the agenda, we have public participation. Kim, do we have any speakers tonight?
Yes, we do.
Public comments are welcome. They are limited to 3 minutes per speaker for a total of up to 30 minutes for all speakers combined. They should not include specific individuals or positions. Unless appropriate, the Board of Education will respond by letter to the individual's comment and question. Board members will not engage in conversation or comment during this period. Specific employee or student concerns should be communicated to the superintendent of schools during regular business hours. If there are more than 5 individuals speaking on the same issue, please limit the topic to just 5 speakers of your choice as a group. We are all here for our students, and it is expected that everyone speaking tonight will follow these rules, and everyone present will model the behaviors are expected of students in the school district.
RJ Delisle, and the agenda topic is district leadership direction.
Hi, everyone. Of course, today I'm here in my role as president of the PAPAS, which is the Baldwinsville Administrative Association. So I'm representing them in my statements tonight. As a leadership team in the district, we believe we have a unique perspective to offer the Board of Education about the current leadership of the district. Many members of the administrative team have been here through the challenges created by previous superintendents. Each of these situations have caused upheaval for all staff, students, and the community. However, the leadership of the district has maintained not only a steady course of action, but led the district forward through those turbulent times. All of this was led with the current acting superintendent at the helm. Through the leadership of the acting superintendent and the cabinet, the district administrative leadership team has kept focus on student achievement and safety. Not only does this include continued sorry, I'm gonna cough, recognition for the academic and non-academic achievements of our students, but the exemplary response during the global pandemic. The acting superintendent has led by example, returning students to more instructional seat time than other local districts. When other districts were keeping students on remote or limited hybrid models, our acting superintendent collaborated with the Administrative Association, the Teachers Association, Paraprofessional Association, and the CSEA to increase the seat time of our students. All right, I gotta get this over with. Sorry. During the current superintendent disruption, the district leadership has maintained a positive and professional presence in our schools and the greater Baldwinsville community. Once again, all led by the current acting superintendent. It is for these reasons and many more that we feel compelled to urge the Board of Education not to seek outside interim leadership. We cannot state more emphatically that any further disruption to the current leadership would not be advantageous or productive. Under the leadership of the acting superintendent, the district has maintained a focus on instruction, safety, and open communication. We respect the responsibility of the Board of Ed to hire the superintendent and to evaluate the performance. However, we feel compelled as an administrative team to share with the BOE that we believe the leadership of the acting superintendent has been outstanding, once again, in keeping the Baldwinsville Central School District continuously moving forward. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments tonight. Moving on to the next part of the agenda is approval of the consent agenda. Resolved that the Board of Education approve the consent agenda pursuant to the attached. Can I have a motion, please?
Second.
Matt first, Wayne second. Any questions or discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We have 8 now, so passes 8-0. Moving on to the next part of the agenda is the report section, the leadership report.
So we're gonna first start this evening with a presentation and an update from our learning coaches. So if they can make their way up to the microphones, we have Gabby, Jenna, Eric, Julie. I'm just gonna say that that's enough. And Emily.
All right, so good evening, everyone. We thought we were going to be introduced by our supervisor, so we'll introduce ourselves. I'm Emily Castor. I'm a pre-K to 6th grade learning coach. This is my 2nd year in this role. And Julie Jones-Beckwith, pre-K to 6th learning coach as well.
I'm Eric Ziegler. I'm a learning coach at 7-12, but I oversee all the way down to kindergarten for science and technology integration.
And I'm Gabby Size, 7th and 12, humanities.
So we're going to Plan B because, you know, this was Renee and Tony over in here. So basically, this was some of our stuff that we highlighted in the past with everyone that was on the board prior to this year. But we have many different hats as a learning coach. Everything that you see up there is part of our day-to-day. So learning facilitator, we could be going and looking at data in the office. We could be providing data to individuals on grade level teams or departments. We act as mentors for our counterparts day to day when we're walking through the halls. You know, it could be a candid conversation in the hallways where we're just giving some advice or providing a resource. You know, we're lucky to have an office together where we're collaborating and looking for different resources to provide, all research-based strategies that we get to go to a lot of different workshops and conferences, national conferences, state conferences. So we get a lot of different opportunities to then turnkey this with all of our stakeholders, all of our staff members. So, we're very fortunate to have our positions in the district so that we can, again, provide this opportunity for teachers. So it's just some of the stuff. The next slide.
All right, so although we have many roles, all of those roles that were listed, one of the ways that we can support teachers is through a coaching cycle. So we have a visual of that on the board, which is really just a job-embedded professional learning. So we meet the teacher where they're at with what they want to work on. So this coaching cycle does not represent just one meeting or one day. This is a series of days, and sometimes one coaching cycle can turn into several, depending on what the teachers want to work on.
So the first part of the cycle would be to meet with the teacher to set a goal. At this point, we work collaboratively to set that goal, whether it's an instructional and or student learning goal. During this time, this helps us set a clear target for the rest of the process. And once we have that process, or once we have that goal established, then we work on a plan that supports the goal and ways to progress monitor that goal.
So, once we have that goal, we as coaches basically do what we can to support teachers in that moment and in the longevity of the cycle. That can look like assisting with new strategies, co-teaching, like Alex said in the beginning, pop-up meetings as needed, and also collecting data, which we all know is huge. And that can also look like just absolving a class and then giving non-evaluative feedback.
And then ending that cycle is really important for reflection, not only on our part as the coach to see how that cycle kind of transpired along the way, but also having that teacher reflect on, did we get to the goal? Did we meet that goal? Are we progressing? Do we stay the course? Do we need to change an angle and change something and make a new goal? And that's why it's so important to have a continuous cycle, because in the past, this is just an aside and kind of a final note to this. Prior to COVID, a lot of those other roles that you just saw on the other slide was a lot of our highlights, right? We were behind the scenes, we were providing the resource, but this job-embedded coaching has increased tremendously over the last couple of years since post-COVID. Now that we're in the hallways with them, they're inviting us in, and we're making that traction with them over and over and over again, where if you're meeting with teachers often and more than once, they're more likely to feel success and realize that they're making progress to that goal and changing goals with us to further motivation on our students, engagement, and finally, achievement, ultimately increasing achievement. So it's this highlight that has been the best part of our jobs, through Jim Knight's instructional coaching and impact cycles through Elena Aguilar. Really, we just are, again, fortunate to learn so much about this and be able to implement it.
All right, so we'll do a little dive into elementary coaching, so pre-K to 6th grade. We already talked about what a coaching cycle was. It's based off of teacher goals, and we use best practices. But we also spend time giving teachers professional development that supports their instruction. So that might be after school professional development. A lot of it is also during the summer, and also through our communication through email and newsletters and things like that.
So supporting teachers with district initiatives. This year we have continued our district work with Dr. Holly, and we have continued with the practitioners that Dr. Holly has sent in to work with teachers as well. So we have supported that in different schools, and a couple of the different elementary schools. And also we have facilitated the after-school binder study. So the binder study is all tied to the Dr. Holly work with the strategies and the protocols that are geared towards or looked at under the lens of the CLRT. And then on-the-spot support with resources in technology. Resources, more so for me, with any of the district resources that we have, or any of the programs. And I'm going to be honest, if there's a technology issue, I usually call Eric. So.
So building on that first goal is really assisting all teachers with all of the integration that we have around the district. And some of the highlights, just to point out a few things. We now have Clever integration. It's a single sign-on portal. It makes it streamlined for the most, the smallest of our crew, right? UPK and kindergarten, right? What it allows you to do is really create QR badges so that kids that can't type, right, can QR in, and it gets us all to our third-party vendors. On the older students, what it does is provide a single access for some of our main third-party vendors that we use. Another huge thing that I want to highlight with the technology integration is, it kind of goes on to that bullet number 2 as well. With student-centered classrooms, we really want to know what the students are thinking, and to do that best, to have them be productively dialoguing with students. We have one-to-one integration with Chromebooks. So using a program with like Aristotle Borderless Classroom, it's a way to mirror up a Chromebook without even plugging in anything, where you can see what the students are doing. It's a good classroom behavior tool as well, but really for instruction, it's been a game changer, because now you can see, and the peers can see what they want to talk about and dialogue in the classroom. It allows for a lot of productive discourse in the classroom. But again, it really gets to a student-centered approach as opposed to a teacher-directed approach in the classroom.
Assisting in curriculum development and data. That is us working with teachers to make sure that standards are aligned, assisting in modifications and differentiation. Also supporting non-content specific standards, so like the social emotional learning benchmarks and civic readiness benchmarks. And finally, like working with staff to make sure that they're using data to drive the instruction, so formative and summative data to really make sure that meaningful groups are being grouped in classrooms and using that to inform the instruction. And then finally, daily coaching centered around ongoing teacher goals and PD. So like Julie said, a lot of Dr. Holly implementation has been going on with the binaural study and teachers involved in coaching cycles. So we've continued to implement those strategies and help with those strategies in classrooms, not just in classrooms, but also in planning. And then finally, continuing PD support. A lot of it happened over the summertime. So some examples: co-teaching, engagement with discussion strategies, tech integrating, and continuing to make sure that the assessments that students getting are giving teachers the data that they need to inform instruction. On the next slide, we have a quote to leave you with the end of this little presentation. This is from Elena Aguilar, who we use for a lot of our information about coaching. So we're just going to leave you with that quote.
Any questions?
Yeah, it's, we don't always ask this question, and we probably should during all these great presentations. You guys have such an important job, is to make the phenomenal teachers that we have here, to help them to continue to improve, and that's such an important job. Is there anything that you need to continue to do that and do that so well, so that we can continue as a district to get, to make the best better, really?
I think just the continued, support from everyone. Being able to go to, like what I was talking about, national and state level conferences and workshops, being able to be provided the opportunity to go to our BOCES and talk with the region, talk to other colleagues in other districts, seeing what best practices are out there, just that continued support, and then we could kind of turnkey it. Really, what we highlighted tonight, that job embedded support, that day-to-day, is the most important to keep the progress. But just continued support from all of you.
I
I appreciate that, and so don't, this really goes to all the groups that have been presented. I think it's, please don't ever hesitate to come back if there is something that's going on. And obviously, you have the proper channels and chain of command and all that stuff, but, we are here, and we're here for the students and you who are there for the students. So it's good to hear such great development is continuing going on.
So Tony kind of stole part of my question, but you had talked about the differences before and after COVID. Do you find it to be more difficult to kind of manage your time, having like the extra, I guess, parts of the job or getting more involved, or is it kind of just come natural and just, you're doing things a little bit differently now?
I guess I'll represent the newer coaches on the team. I'm definitely still figuring it out. Even just between last year and this year, there's been a big increase with how much support people are asking for. And everybody's at different levels, right? The teachers that we meet with. We have new teachers, we have veteran teachers. So I don't know if there's a perfect system. We use our Google Calendars pretty regularly to keep track of things, but it is a balancing act. Some weeks we're meeting with multiple people in a day, and you have to kind of stop and think, like, what building am I in today? Am I meeting with, what grade level am I going to? Did I bring that folder of stuff with me? So it's a learning curve for us newbies, I guess. I don't know if I'd like to add anything.
No, I think that we've all continued to kind of try to manage time wisely. It has doubled our numbers. We are very busy, so but we have to take time out in between to be able to gather resources for teachers, and it's forcing yourself to take that time to do that.
Is there a common thread, an area, trends you're noticing among the staff that you're supporting in terms of the support they're seeking from all of you? And just another question, how many learning coaches do we have in the district? Was it at one point?
Yeah. There's 5.
So there's 5?
There was 6. We had, but that one individual is doing an administrative internship this year.
So we're down to 5.
5 this year.
What's your caseload?
So it depends.
Going back to
really.
your question, Tony,
Yeah.
what they need.
Yeah, no, it just really depends. They definitely see our expertise in our different areas, so it depends on who's asking for what, but in current trends, having new clear touch boards in the district, so I'm seeing trends that need support there. It ebbs and flows a lot, when we have new resources that come aboard, it tends to be higher in that area, right? If we do need to divide and conquer, sometimes I might say, Jewel, I can't get to Eldon today, but can you spot check this, because I know you're in the building. So, cell phones are amazing. You text someone, they're in the building, they're there, they're supporting. So, having that capability, we really as a team balance what we need to. And, in some circumstances, we're all at a conference, we're at a workshop, we just use that Google Calendar and we reach back out to the teacher and say, hey, what can we do via email today, and then we'll meet up with you tomorrow, or we'll get to you the next day. So, it's that kind of balance that we are daily dealing with, but I would say it's manageable, right?
Well, you guys took some of my questions. That's good. I have less. No, that's good. We're all on the same page here. You have a lot of different roles. Do you find yourself being asked to fill one role more than another? Like, where do you think you're being asked for the most? Like, I see data coach, instructional specialist. Is there any one area? Is it pretty even across?
It's pretty even across. Because again, it depends on the needs that individual teacher has in the moment. So it might be data, especially when it comes to grades. While it might be in the beginning of the year, it's going to look a little different. Towards the end of the year, it's going to look a little different. But what we do is completely driven by what the teachers need and how they need to be supported.
And also, like, how long do you typically work with a teacher? Do you get called back multiple times? Do you work with the same teacher for extended period of time? I know we talked about balancing, but are you getting like callbacks for more assistant? And do you find that with, you know, the newer teachers who need the support, or veteran teachers trying to, you know, keep up with all the new stuff, especially in the area of technology, because I'm terrible at it. I'm just gonna put that out there.
So that's that cycle, right? So we are meeting with them multiple points, right? So when we hit that or have them set that goal with us, that's just the first start. So that's the initial visit. We may go back to our office, collaborate, hey, what resources do we have in the office? Do we have any literature or resources that we can go and meet again, right? That's step 2, right? So it's multiple meetings until you get through that cycle. If things change during the cycle, that even makes it more extended, right? So we're constantly meeting with several teachers at a time in a cycle, or multiple cycles at a time. So to answer your question, it really is multiple times that you're meeting with a person. Did I answer that?
Because goals are changing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then my other thought when you were presenting, the question was asked, you know, what themes and threads, themes that you have coming towards you for asking for assistance. What's your collaboration with, you know, the curriculum instruction with professional development? If you see one topic coming up a lot, do you communicate with them and say, hey, you know what, we have a lot of teachers asking for this particular support. You know, do you leap over to that's an area for a PDC day to focus on?
Yeah.
Yes, we also take notes throughout the year and keep track of trends that guides our PD for the summer, our planning, or even after school PD before the summer even comes. So
sometimes we'll even just do surveys too, to see if there's anything that we maybe missed at the different levels of what teachers are interested in. And it kind of just depends on how much, you know, those PDC days you'll have an hour or so. During the summer you have longer, so you just have to kind of weigh which are the heavier topics that you want to cover when, but it's as things come up.
And as for trends, I'm geared more towards like the reading, the ELA end of it, and social studies, so more humanities. So mine is geared right towards that, whereas Emily might take more of the math goals and work with teachers that have more. But I would say overall, it's structuring the blocks, the different blocks, and obviously increasing student engagement through multiple strategies. So
just to expand about the process and the communication between the learning coaches and the curriculum directors. So they meet regularly with them as a group, and then every Friday, all of the directors meet with me and we go through, and so there's topics, there's conversation about professional development. We're already planning some of the work for the summer based on the conversations that the learning coaches are having with the directors, as well as the superintendent's conference day. So it really is this ongoing conversation, and they're reachable by the directors, you know, both ways. So.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Happy holidays.
So next, we have Danielle coming up to walk us through the data for the chronic absenteeism. So we put the report, summary report there on the public side. We also had it in the weekly letter. But what Danielle is going to do is try to walk through where this data is on our district data dashboard. So we get people used to utilizing that site, and certainly ask questions along the way. Danielle will do her best to answer them. And then I believe later on in the meeting, right, we might talk about further questions and dialogue under the board roundtable, so that we know that we're getting you everything that you need as board members.
Thank you, Joe. Good evening, everyone. I'm here again to share some of our district data with you. As Joe had mentioned, we did share a state ed report that goes right along with the data that's presented on our attendance tab in our interactive report card. So I'm going to go ahead and just turn to that attendance page. And I will mention that the Data that you see here on this attendance page specifically, I did update so that it was reflective through December 2nd was the last day that students were in attendance in terms of this report. So as you can see on this page, and as we've talked about in our quarterly reports, on this right-hand side, when we're talking about attendance, our students currently have been present for 94% of the days that we've had so far, and that gets calculated. You might remember me talking very excitedly about our million days of school in the past. So when you take our average number of students who are enrolled and you multiply that by 180 when we're at a full end of the school year, you end up with about 1 million days. And so it's a really long spreadsheet that makes people like me excited when we're working with them. But in terms of the chronic absenteeism, really what we're looking at is students who fall within this 6% of days. So we're honing in and we're trying to take a look at students who might be at risk of becoming chronically absent, students who are at risk of becoming chronically absent, and students who are meeting the criteria for being chronically absent. So when we're talking about some of those percentages or what the cuts are for a student to be identified as not at risk, or chronically absent, in terms of this report itself, our students who are not at risk might have only missed 0 days, right? Ideally, perfect attendance, but they might have missed only 1 or 2 days of school so far this school year. Our students who are at risk might have missed 3 to 5 days of school so far this school year, and students who are chronically absent might have missed 6 or more days. And so all of those numbers are just in terms of the fact that this report represents only 57 days of our 180-day school year. So that's why this report is always building over time, and unfortunately, data is in the past. As soon as that date has ended, depending how long it's been since our last reporting cycle, that data is captured in time. And so, again, that's the nature of this level of reporting, being that by the time that we send it up to the state and pull it back down from the state, again, time has passed. So again, looking at those chronic absenteeism numbers, here on our district's report card, we can look at these numbers as displayed. This is representative of all of our students, so we currently have about half of our students who are not at risk of becoming chronically absent as of this moment, but that's based on them not missing any days of school up to about 2 days of school so far this school year. We have about 28% of students who are at risk of becoming chronically absent. So again, that means that they've missed anywhere from 3 to 5 days. But then students who are chronically absent have missed at least 6 days, if not more. What I would also like to mention is that it's based off of the days that they're enrolled. So some of the students who might be considered chronically absent were only enrolled in the district for a short period of time, or maybe they attended for only a couple of days out of the time that they were enrolled. So they still might fall into that chronically absent category because they missed 10% or more of the days that they were enrolled. So again, as is, this is reflective of all of our students. Yes, question?
When you say enrolled, they're enrolled the first day, but then they didn't come for whatever reason?
They might be enrolled the first day, they might not enroll into our district until the middle of October. So whenever their start date for their enrollment is, to their end date of their enrollment, those are the number of days that is kind of that denominator. And then the number of days, obviously, that they miss gets factored into that.
So I think what Danielle's trying to say with that point, so if you enrolled in November and then you've missed 2 days of school, it's likely based on the number of days that you have been enrolled in the district that that's going to fall above that 10% or more school days eligible for that student. So I think her point is saying that certainly over the course of the entire school year, it's important to monitor this information and to get ask additional questions, which is what they're doing. So, do we think, 6 days is really not a lot when you consider some of the illness and the viral illnesses that are going around, right? A kid could be out for a couple of days just because they catch the common cold. But over time, that's where the social workers, the principal, the school counselors, the teaching staff, they're monitoring those students from these reports so that they can really dig in and say, is this truly a student that is struggling and doesn't want to be here, or is it an issue where there was one illness that's triggering them on this report? So there's a lot that goes into this, and that's why it's important to monitor and not take it solely as in isolation for one quarter. We really do have to look at over every marking period as we present.
Right, and those 6 days might be a couple of days in September, which doesn't feel like a whole lot. Maybe a couple of days in October, a couple of days in November. Now they've hit their 10%. So again, over the course of the year, the amount of days that student is in school continues to grow, and we want them here the large majority of those days, 90% of those days, in terms of again, what is considered chronically absent or not. So while the percentages of students in each of those risk levels is certainly one piece of criteria that we look at, another is simply the number of days that students are missing. So students who are not chronically absent currently are missing on average about 4 days of school, while students who are chronically absent on average are missing almost 10 days of school. So you can see those numbers shift as well. As we might drill into some of this data. So like I had said before, this is representative of all of our students, but we know that there's certainly the ability on this interactive report card to take a moment and to really take a closer look and drill in a little bit further to see, well, is it certain grade levels of students who might be chronically absent more than others? Are there certain grade levels who might not be missing a whole lot of school? So the trend that we're definitely noticing, I'm just gonna click on first grade as an example, the younger that our students are, the more school they're missing. The other trend that we're seeing with those early grade levels is that we simply don't have as high of enrollment. So pre-K, for example, we don't only have 180 pre-K kids. Our kindergarten group is actually a fairly small group, relatively speaking, where we only have 347 kindergartners compared to these other grade levels that might have about 400 students in them. So again, the size of the group is important because you're looking at how many students of that group might be considered chronically absent to determine those percentages. So again, one of the trends that we see in terms of grade level is definitely the younger the grade. Unfortunately, I think what many of you might have experienced with your own children, or I know with my own niece and nephew, they get sick a lot. They're being introduced to new germs, things that they haven't necessarily fought off yet. And then we know that we also have the reality of COVID-19 still existing in our community. So somebody who might test positive on Sunday or Monday, they're out for 5 days, right off the bat. The other trend that, usually it's Jeff that asks me this question year after year, he always wants to know, is there a different trend with our seniors, right? Like, are our seniors coming to school, or are they done with most of their coursework and they don't feel like maybe it's so important? We do see some differences in the higher grade levels compared to the younger grade levels. Not so much in terms of the percentage of students who are chronically absent. So I'm talking like kindergarten, we're talking like 30% of our kindergartners are chronically absent, but only 24% of our seniors are chronically absent. The difference though is the number of days that they're missing. So the average chronically absent senior is missing about 12 days of school, where the average chronically absent kindergartner is missing about 9. So again, all relative, all in terms of whatever the total number of students in that group is. But all in all, grade levels are pretty similar, where each grade level is pretty much making up close to the same amount. But that's just an example of one of the components that goes into the data analysis surrounding chronic absenteeism. But another thing that I wanted to point out in terms of this dashboard is that in addition to grade level, subgroup analysis can also be done. And so I know that when we're talking about equity, and as we presented a couple of board meetings ago, when we're talking about, I just selected our economically disadvantaged subgroup here on the dashboard. So you'll notice that those numbers adjusted from where we were on the screen before. So our chronically absent students who are economically disadvantaged, we currently have about 34% of that subgroup who's chronically absent. So again, how many days are they missing on average? About 11 days for those chronically absent students. So as we start to analyze some of that data, we see that our economically disadvantaged students, for example, are absent or are chronically absent more so than our students who are not economically disadvantaged. Or if we're thinking about equity, when we look at our all students group, there's 1,290 students who are chronically absent. When we look at our economically disadvantaged group, that's 570 students. So if we're only looking at the population of students who are chronically absent, we take that 570 kids out of the 1,290 total, that's about 44% of all chronically absent students who are economically disadvantaged. So there's different ways that you can look at that data, whether it's in terms of comparison to the subgroup, in terms of comparison to all students who are chronically absent, for example. So again, that's just how the dashboard can be used to take what might otherwise be a 8-page static report and condense it into a 1-page interactive report that has filters that allow you to filter through some of that data. So with that, I'm certainly happy to answer any of your questions.
Danielle?
Yes.
If I'm not mistaken, absenteeism is just not at school. It's not an excused, unexcused.
It doesn't differentiate, it's just.
So it could be somebody sick, it could be somebody didn't have a ride to school, somebody could be on a college visit, somebody could be on vacation, it doesn't matter.
Or they could even have not reported yet, and these unresolved absences, our secretaries here, we gotta make sure that we're, resolving those, or if we're not hearing from a family, it does move to an unexcused absence. But yes, even those unresolved ones are factored in here. One piece that's not factored in here that I will mention just as a talking point is that suspension days are not considered absent in terms of attendance. So I bring that up because students who are chronically absent who are also suspended for multiple days of the year are missing even more instruction than just being suspended or just being absent.
Thanks.
So I just have a question. So you have all of this data on like chronic absentees. I know like we have to move, through the year, see where they end up, but we see, some people students who could fall into that area. So I guess, we have this data, so then what do we do with it? Like what's your next focus after you identify this with the different groups and how you're breaking it out?
Yeah, so, like Joe had kind of mentioned, even when we were talking about our all students subgroup, one thing that is certainly a first step that happens right in September and happened this year as well is making sure that our buildings are able to access this data. So we have a custom report in school tool so that on any given day, school staff are able to run this report, and it's moving and changing over time because they can run it at any given day, and just access the data, right? Like, that's always the first step, is just knowing and being able to access it. One of those next steps in the building is, what is the plan for intervention? Is the social worker in constant communication with the family, or is this a family that maybe the principal has a different kind of connection with? I think that it also is important to mention how we have some outside resources or groups that we're able to tap into as well. Our Promise Zone specialists, to our access liaisons, to our Liberty resources personnel. So it's definitely not a one fix, and it definitely is built on the relationships that our school staff have with families and with our students. But I think that it's also connected when we're talking about equity, about how safe our students feel in our school buildings, what kind of sense of belonging they feel in order for them to want to come to school and feel comfortable just being in school. So I think that's where we see those puzzle pieces all start to come together, ultimately to address, you know, reasons that students are absent, but change it to more of a proactive and a preventative role of how can we have our kids want to come to school every day.
I sense you looking at me. I don't see any other questions right now.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Thank you, Danielle.
Thank you, everyone. Happy holidays.
So the final piece under the leadership report, before we get into the budgets presentations, is Kim's going to give us a brief overview of where we stand currently with the fund balance projection.
So last year we updated the format of it in regards to providing this information to hopefully provide clarity. As we talked about last year, and obviously we're very early in the year to be projecting this, but basically this data is taken off from the treasurer's report that was on the consent agenda to take a look at where we are in regards to our expenses. We talked a lot last year about the fact of encumbering things to make sure that we can project accurately. So it does look like we will be creating additional fund balance and or ability to fund reserves. I think that's one of the conversations that we've had at the facilities meeting with the long-range facility plan, and the need to have those reserves in order to support that local piece, which we'll talk more about when we get into the budget presentation later. And then we're also looking at projecting out our revenue this early in the year. Obviously, we know our tax levy, but in regards to state aid, some of those factors are a little more fluid in miscellaneous revenue. So those are kind of the pieces of the puzzle that we're at. As we get closer towards the end of the year, we'll start bringing that revenue projection closer periodically as well. So that's kind of the long and the short of it. You know, we have the adopted budget, we have those expenses, and then at the bottom of this, the thing that I do want to point out is that $2.9 million that we're pulling back out is actually district money that was allocated to balance the budget that we're always hoping that we're not using. So obviously we can't count that when we're looking at the preliminary fund balance that we're generating at the end of the year. And as we move forward, we'll add some additional lines to the bottom of this calculation as well to provide some additional clarity about where we would be to be able to fund reserves. Any questions?
So if there's no questions, then we're going to have Mike Tierney, our Director of Transportation, come up, and he's going to provide the first reading, basically, of the proposed transportation budget.
Good evening, everyone. My apologies up front. We in transportation are used to getting very early starts, so I'm past my bedtime right now. Joe, if we could avoid that 4:45 a.m. wake-up call, I'd appreciate it. No presentation of mine would be complete without showing off the district elementary boundary map. I'm using it tonight to point out the various complexities and expenses that our elementary zoning gives to transportation. As you can see with the fluorescent green there, the McNamara zone, it encompasses the Radisson development as well as down in the southern end of State Fair Boulevard, Route 48, etc. If you go up to the northern end of the Radisson zone, you're looking at 20 to 25 minute drive just to get to school when you factor in traffic. Additionally, the Reynolds zone, which is the pinkish color, it encompasses a very large rural area, so that alone is a lot of miles driven. And this is, students are on the bus for quite the period of time. And even Van Buren, which is a nice little village community, that separates out over the river as well. Throw on top of it the addition of 165 UPK students that are eligible for transportation now, and a lot of those being displaced from their home zone. It's creating very long bus routes and does add to the expenses of the transportation department. Just to point out here, 71% of the transportation budget is salaries. Salary increases are contractually negotiated. Many of my employees think it all has to do with me, but actually it's covered by contract. The larger increases were due to negotiation in hopes of retaining and recruiting new personnel. It's not been as beneficial as I wanted it to be. However, we are doing better than most of our Central New York school districts of comparable size. So that is definitely a plus. BOCES costs are estimated at 4% at this point, as we do not have the service numbers from them yet. And the copier agreements have moved to the BOCES technology services and will be shifted into the technology budget. So they'll be coming out of our transportation budget. You can see here the 2022-2023 budget compared to the 23-24 budget. At first sight, you can see a significant increase. Oh, Tiffany, I'm sorry. I'll try to remember to nod. There has been a significant increase in the transportation budget that is being proposed for next year, and we will get into the whys here in a minute. When we look at the graph for budget versus expenditures, a couple of important things to note in recent years. The 2019-2020 school year was the COVID shutdown. It was actually the year that we moved into this building. We were open for 2 weeks and a day, and then COVID shut us down. Also in 2020-2021, that was the year of the cohort scheduling and very little extracurricular trips. So expenses were way down that year as well. This is the screen that makes Kim and Tiffany very, very happy. Our transportation state aid for 2023-2024 will be at 81%, which is up from 78%. So we've had an increase in state aid going into next school year. Onto the bus purchases. We are proposing that, much like for the school year we are in, we are proposing the purchase of 10 65-passenger full-size school buses, as well as 2 30-passenger actual school bus chassis, but the shorter ones, which we've discussed in the past, and additionally 2 30-passenger with wheelchair lifts on there. Want to talk a little bit about the safety features here in just a minute. One of the issues, like everyone is experiencing in this world, is an increase in all costs, right? Whether we're talking fuel, if you're going out to purchase a new vehicle, if you're simply getting an oil change on a vehicle right now, the costs have skyrocketed, and that includes our school buses. That's where the 81% state aid really comes into play for school transportation. For the last 4 years, we've been purchasing our school buses with a safety feature that's the collision mitigation system, which it encompasses adaptive cruise, enhanced collision mitigation, auto vehicle braking, roadway departure alert and braking, lane departure warning, and overspeed alert. Additionally, what I am proposing for next school year for all of our buses, the following safety features. As you know, this time of year, especially with high school and middle school students, when we're picking them up, it is very, very dark outside, especially this time of year, and it's dangerous, especially in the winter weather. I'm outfitting the buses with an external LED light right outside of the entry door. So as soon as that driver opens up the entry door, that light comes on and illuminates pretty much the whole right-hand side of the school bus. So the driver will be able to see out, and the student will be able to see what they're stepping onto. We're also going to equip them with, and I'm not sure if you've seen them, if you've been behind one of our newer wheelchair buses, the destination signs that say school bus in the front of the bus up towards the top, as well as the rear of the bus. The signs that we are going to be putting in them, you can see for miles. The ones that a lot of our current buses have, you can barely tell that they're illuminated. You cannot see them when it is dark out. Also, we're going to equip them with a device that's called the 270-degree More Vision camera system, and it comes with a 10-inch display for the driver. So what is the More Vision camera system? It is a backup camera, which we currently do not have, so much like in any of the newer vehicles that you would go out and purchase, now our drivers will be able to see out the back of the bus, which they're not able to do right now. They do not even have a rear view mirror like you have in your own personal vehicle. Additionally, there's going to be a camera on the front of the bus. Have you ever seen those mirrors at the front of the hood on a school bus? They're called crossover mirrors. Now there's going to be a camera on the front of the bus, so drivers will actually be able to see underneath the front bumper. Some of our little students, it would be very easy for them to climb under the front of the bus, and the driver would not be able to see them even with the mirrors. So now with the camera system, they would be able to see that. Also, there will be, right where the new LED light is, right outside the service door, the entry door, there will be a camera right there that will show the driver behind the entry door. Statistics show us that most serious injuries and fatalities on a school bus when it comes to students is a student being hit by their own bus. And I hate to be graphic, but it is from the little ones who lose something, who drop something getting off the bus, it goes under their bus, their instinct is to go and grab it. With this camera system, it will provide a much better viewpoint for the driver, creating a much safer situation. Additionally, we're going to increase the quality of our interior camera system with a high definition video system. Essentially, it's better technology now. Each passing year, it improves. Additionally, we're adding an extra camera inside the vehicle to see better what's going on. Not to get off topic from the safety stuff, but I know I'm going to be asked, so I'll just bring it out there. I actually checked with my dealer this morning for those of you interested in electric school buses. First of all, to get them similarly equipped as to what we get our buses equipped as now, we are looking anywhere between $450,000 and $500,000 in the current market. Also, we're about 2 years out from being able to take delivery, and that's if we were to order them today. So we're about 2 years out on those. Next slide is just showing the total bus proposition with the state aid included, the 81% state aid. And the state aid is actually covering $1,782,914. I'm going to brag for just a second if you guys don't mind. I was researching some data, and when the department started tracking accident data, it was 2013-2014 school year. So I went back and looked at our at-fault accidents, an accident that, or incident for that matter, that our drivers could have prevented. It was their fault. In 13-14, we had 26. In 14-15, we had 16. 15-16, we had 18 accidents. 16-17, we had 16 accidents. 17-18, we had 18 accidents. In 18-19, keep in mind this was before I started. Please keep that in mind. 36 accidents, at-fault accidents. 19-20, the year of the COVID shutdown, we had 7. In 2021, we had 5. Again, that was with the cohort schedule and very few extracurricular trips. 21-22, it jumped back up to 15, but here's why I'm really, really proud of my department before I get back into the budget stuff. 0 today. 0 accidents or incidents this year. I'm very, very proud of that. Thank you. All right, now back onto the numbers. I just want to go over the budget accounts, the line items with significant increases. The first one is our contractual, which includes our routing software, our GPS software, Fleet Vision, which is the program the mechanics use, 19A, which is our DMV stuff that's required of our drivers. It's a 5% increase at this point. Contractual for bus repairs, obviously inflation comes into play. Cummins, which is a big manufacturer of diesel engines, their software is not available to repair facilities currently unless you are a dealer. So anytime we are not able to diagnose a diesel engine repair, we actually have to send it to a repair facility to have it repaired. I think I got a handle on it going forward, but I'm not going to promise you that. It would actually save us a significant amount of money because we do have technicians who are qualified to use the software and whatnot to make the diagnosis, but we're not quite there yet. So for next year, we are looking at a $9,100 increase for contractual when it comes to bus repairs. Vehicle supplies, parts. We're looking at a $41,000 increase, going up to $350,000 for next year. And I'm going to break it down for you in just a minute. Gas and fuel, that's obviously a gigantic expense, right? Last year when I put this budget together, we had not seen the massive increase in fuel costs. And so what I'm basing the current number, or the forecasted number for next year, is what we had to increase it to during the course of last school year. So we are budgeting $950,000 for next year. That doesn't just include the school buses here. Remember, we have many community partners who actually reimburse us for the fuel that they use. So that's not completely an expense. The cost of oil for simple oil changes has gone up significantly. It's gone up over $7,000. Tires have seen a major increase, and we do not take chances when it comes to our tires. There is a state standard that we must abide by. We do not follow that. We don't let our tread get anywhere close to that. When the tires start wearing down, and they're about half their life, we replace them because you cannot put a cost on student safety. Additionally, the equipment for the garage building. The mechanics right now, their shop truck is 2008, I believe, and it's on its last legs. And because we are in this facility now, I'm proposing an actual shop truck where it's built to our specifications. It's a Chevy 3500 with a flatbed on the back where we can actually build it out and have a mobile repair shop. Currently, because we are limited with just having a pickup truck and not being able to carry certain supplies, parts, whatnot, more often than not, we actually have to end up having the vehicles towed back here so we can work on it. I can't promise you that that's always going to be the case with the new shop truck, but it will increase our chances of repairing that out on the road or in a bus loop at a school. Building repair for the garage, couple things with that. With the $5,000 increase, the building is 3 years old now. All warranties, we've exhausted them, and things are going to start breaking. We've actually had to start replacing the eyes on the garage doors in the shop bays. The safety ones that you would have on your own, the laser beam, so it won't shut on a person when it's walking through. We've had to replace all of them today, and the building's only 3 years old. So we forecast more repairs. And then we have the supplies for the garage building, the paper towels, the toilet paper, the cleaning supplies, etc. Rick actually gave me Rick Foderer gave me the increase that he's been seeing, and that'd be a $5,000 increase. Just to give you a little breakdown for the increase that we've seen in parts, brake drums 2 years ago for a set were $153. Currently they are over $200 for a set. A heater motor that keeps our students warm on the bus, and they go kapooey every 2 to 3 years. 2 years ago they were $43, now they're $88 to replace. Fuel tanks, which because of the climate that we live in and the salt that we put on our roads, 2 years ago they were $880 to replace, now they're over $1,100. Fuel filters, which are a common repair item for any vehicle, $31 2 years ago, $63 now. Tires, $328 2 years ago, now they're over $400 a piece. Oil, $16.25 a gallon 2 years ago, $23.95 a gallon now. So we have seen it across the board, significant increases. I tried to be brief, but I tried to be thorough. Any questions for me?
I appreciate that excellent breakdown of the costs. Why did we get an increase in state aid?
Kim, would you like to cover that for me?
Oh.
So multiple factors. There's interesting things going on with state aid right now that Tiffany and I are still kind of diving in a little bit deeper to understand exactly what's happening with some things. So one thing that impacted this year is with the move over here, we have to do something called the non-allowable pupil decimal, where we have to track when we put a student on the bus, when the student gets off, how many students are riding, and then it's a calculation that the state uses to recalculate part of what our state aid ratio is. And we just had to submit this past year. We were supposed to submit it last year, and we asked for them to wait until this year. The main difference is that we're no longer starting where a school building is or returning to where a school building is. There's a distance between here and any of our campuses now. So that's one of the factors that play into that calculation. One of the other things that Tiffany and I have been looking at a lot is how our enrollment in comparison to a lot of districts has remained fairly stable. We've dropped a little bit, as Danielle spoke about earlier. However, the majority of our population has stayed pretty stable when you look at compared to any other district around us, and we looked at that, I think, with facilities, and there was only one district that had an increase in enrollment, and that was related to a relationship with a school that doesn't have a high school. So that's shifting. Obviously, the state has a huge pot of money, and then they divide it out. A lot of that money is divided out based on student counts. So that's kind of what we're watching closely right now to see how that's impacting us here, plus some other factors that we can go through as we look at other budget numbers throughout the year. So a number of factors that go into it. There's a state aid book that's about this thick. If you want some wonderful reading material that I can put you in the direction of, or we can throw in the weekly letter the link to that.
Yeah, I would appreciate that if you would.
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you for that. So the second question, I guess, is, are you fully staffed in the garage?
That's kind of a loaded question. Are you referring to drivers in attendance or the entire department?
I would say that the entire department.
Yes, but no. We are covering all the routes. We still have mechanics driving every day. We do have enough drivers to cover our routes, but then we go things like the flu bug hitting the department, COVID hits the department. So essentially where we are lacking right now is substitute employees, both for drivers and attendants. So our dispatchers and our mechanics are functioning as substitute drivers right now, which is a better position than we were in last year. So I am pleased to report that. And actually we have 4 more interviews for driver positions coming up tomorrow morning.
And if you remember back, we have been, and appreciate the board's support in being creative with our staffing. So we do have more people in the dispatch office and in the mechanic bay, so that's kind of, I don't want to say our self-pool, but in reality it is, that those are the people that are allowing us to continue to transport students uninterrupted, where other districts are struggling a little more there. So that creativity, and we may be coming back with other creative ideas as they come along, because it's hard still to find those sub drivers as well.
I'm glad that there's, you know, that we're able to help in any way we can. Not to speak for the entire board, but I think that we could continue to do that. Now, you mentioned that you had 2 employees and that you might be able to get the, is it the software from Cummins that'll allow you to diagnose?
Yes. Yes.
The vehicle engines, and is that something that they've been trained in or need to continue to train in to be able to get that? Because I'm certain, and you mentioned that would be a significant savings as opposed to having to send every vehicle out that has some sort of issue, to be able to do it in-house with our own excellent employees.
Yeah, they actually will not require training if we're able to push through and able to get this diagnostic software. They have a version of it right now on their computers down in the shop, but unfortunately it's a light version. So essentially, in layman's terms, any complex problem, the program will not allow them to track it. But because of the skills and knowledge that several of our mechanics have, actually, they will be able to jump right in and use the software whenever we're able to secure it. So that, it will be a significant reduction in cost.
Thank you, and I appreciate you answering all my questions. I know they were
My pleasure.
Kind of piggybacking off what Tony was saying, with the new technologies that we plan on adding to the bus, is there any kind of training that's going to be involved with that? And could that possibly delay the routes at all by having to check all these extra cameras or anything like that? Or would that reduce the number of attendants needed or anything like that? Or
I'll start with your last question first, if you don't mind. It will not reduce the number of attendants needed within the transportation department. We actually follow the laws and regulations set forth by the state education department for attendance, and they are there for our students who have special needs. It's actually a requirement of the IEP when an attendant is on a school bus. So it will not affect our attendance at all. As far as training with the new safety features, yes, there's going to be a learning curve with it, just like there was with the collision mitigation system. When we start getting those buses in, and who knows when they're going to come in because of the supply chain issues, we will walk them through. Any driver that gets assigned that bus, we will make sure they understand how to use all the safety features, and we'll actually we'll send myself or one of our trainers out with them so they get comfortable using it.
And then to sort of go along with that, is there any anticipated repair costs? I know you're saying every couple of years things need to be replaced and so on and so forth, so it would just be kind of a cycle with those things too?
Oh, absolutely, yes, yep.
Real quick question. So can you provide, I know at one point in a previous board meeting, we talked about the timeline from the state about introducing electric cars. Can you provide the community an update? And I have a follow-up question after that.
Sure. As far as I know, it is still, districts must begin purchasing electric school buses in 2027, and the entire fleet must be converted to electric vehicles by 2035. Please do not ask me how we're going to make that happen. We are being more proactive than most districts.
No, that's next month.
Oh, okay, I'll be back.
Okay. The other was, there was a conversation that occurred that talked about potential of possibly purchasing a bus to sort of get to explore, get under, is that still in consideration?
Yes, we have actually had several discussions about it, which my purposes of reaching out to our dealership today were not just for this meeting, but also to see how far out it would take us to actually get delivery of an electric vehicle. And again, we're looking at 18 months, 24 months, et cetera.
And I appreciate that. And just a final thought, I just appreciate you for bringing into the space for the community to just make them aware costs are going up across the board, and we need to be prepared.
Yes.
And so I really appreciate that bringing it to you.
My pleasure.
I was just thinking about, what's going to happen here to power all the buses. Have we looked into, I'm thinking about just electric cars and 50 and 60 amp services in personal garages, what that's going to do for all these buses here, and the timeliness of getting all the buses ready to go in the morning.
It would be an incredible expense. We've actually sat down with a company who specializes in charging stations for larger vehicles such as school buses and trucks. It's quite the undertaking. You're looking, if I remember our conversation well enough, we're looking at a couple-year process to get it to where it would need to be, the charging stations for a fleet of our size. And now keep in mind, our fleet ranges anywhere between 125 and 130 vehicles at any time, just for this department alone. So it is quite the undertaking. The best I can tell, the power coming from the street, because National Grid did a major project last summer. I don't know if you remember that, but it encompassed a large part of Radisson. The power coming to our property is set and ready to go. Where many school districts, they don't have that available to them yet. So their undertaking would be even greater than ours. But in terms of getting everything set up in the bus parking lot, it's a major undertaking. You are looking at, we would need to purchase fast chargers, not just the overnight chargers, because of our routes that are going out morning, midday, afternoon, after school, et cetera. We would need those fast chargers, and you're looking at an investment of anywhere between $50,000 and $80,000 for one. So it is significant. And that's not to sound negative, that's just the facts. Yeah, to me, and I've talked about this many times with Kim and with Joe, it's important to try to get an EV in here sooner rather than later, because it's not just the cost, it's not just learning how to drive it, because they do drive differently with all the different commands and functions and whatnot, but our mechanics, they know how to work on diesel and gas engines. They barely know how to spell electric vehicle at this point, because so much of it is going to be different. So it is very important, which is when there was first word about this that came out, a little over a year ago, we began discussions right away.
And we did, Tiffany worked with Leonard Boss to put us in the mix with a grant that I believe Fabius Pompe received and Jordan Albers received. It was random. And we did, submit the information for that. We just weren't selected. So we are actively trying to participate in the process. Even though Mike says we have power from the road in, there's a lot of discussions about the fact that the larger grid in general will, I think to Jen's point, be able to sustain what's coming when this occurs. So there's a lot of factors there. There's a lot of factors in regards to where the charging stations go. I mean, obviously we're looking into this, and any active conversations that we can be a part of, we're definitely participating in. So it's gonna, we have a huge fleet. At one point I heard something about extending the aid. Right now our buses are purchased, we pay for them over 5 years, and the aid comes back to us over 5 years. And I heard at one point they were talking about doubling the length of time, which is absolutely frightening to us, because we already have buses that are 10 years old, and whether they're electric or not, they're still being driven in New York conditions, and we know what a 10-year-old bus looks like. So if they go to 10 years or even beyond, that's gonna come with additional complications and additional repairs that we're gonna have to do on those buses just to meet DOT in regards to the inspections. So there's a lot of factors around all of this that we're definitely looking at and considering, but a lot of unanswered questions.
So just out of curiosity, how far can a bus go on a charge? Like, I'm thinking about, some of our groups that go on lengthy field trips and stuff, how is this gonna work across the state with school districts and
Jen,
these type of activities?
Can I ask you a question?
I'm not sure if I
Are we
want
talking
to.
about on December 19th? Or are we talking about on June 30th? Because the temperature difference is it still comes into effect with electric vehicles, and that's something we can't overcome. Based on the technology that's out there right now, I'm hearing anywhere between 140 and 160 miles at ideal conditions, which would be 60 to 65 degrees. We have a route, just one of our routes that goes down to Cortland and back every day. So that's what, 60 miles down there, 60 miles back. All of a sudden, you're at that borderline. So.
Terrain plays a factor as well.
Oh, it absolutely does play a factor. Yeah. So just going through the hills of Lafayette, all of a sudden that 140 to 160 mile range is now going to be 120. Now is that bus going to be able to get back? So. Do I see the technology improving rapidly over the next 4 or 5 years? I do, because there's a lot of research and a lot of money going into it right now, especially with bus manufacturers, but we're just not there yet.
thinking about the safety of our students and the position we're being put in. A lot of unknowns right now. Just one more question. You said something about supply chain issues. Are there any things that you're finding having struggling getting when needed? Just out of curiosity, what types of parts and things we're looking at?
Well, I believe we're still waiting for 7 school buses for this year that we put in the order about this time last year, contingent upon the budget passing. That's been our biggest issue. Our mechanics do a great job with kind of forecasting the parts that we need. You know, special orders are one thing, but we know we're going to need brake drums. We know we're going to need tires. We know we're going to need fuel filters. So when they're available, we just order them in bulk. So it saves us money in the long run, and we have the facility to be able to store that type of equipment now. But the biggest issue right now is getting our new buses in. We've received 6 of them to date, 6 full-size, so we're still waiting for 4 full-size buses, which I've been told are coming on the 29th, but I've been told dates previously that haven't come through, and it's not our dealership's fault. They're just not coming in from the manufacturer. And it's not just the manufacturer we use, it's any manufacturer. For our special needs buses, the 30 passengers, I'm being told March or April that they'll be here. And normally our buses come to us at the end of July or beginning of August.
And then I think you had said in previous presentations that just when they're received, they're not ready to go right on the road. There's a process or a time process.
There is a process. We spec them out. For something as simple as installing a broom and making sure it's not going to go flying. The garbage cans, the fire extinguishers, the seatbelt cutters, a lot of the smaller safety equipment. Our mechanics install that when it arrives. That includes the two-way radios that we use for communication between the driver and the office staff, stuff like that. Yeah, so it's a process. I can assure you that if they do come in on the 29th, they'll be ready to go very quickly, because that will be their top priority.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Happy holidays.
So we're going to transition to the next presentation. Kim and Tiffany, or Kim is going to quickly go through the next component, which is the debt service and benefits budget for 23-24.
Correct. So if we take a look at the first slide, the overall impact is looks more significant than it is. We were required this year to move some stuff around in regards to debt service and how we handle our leases. So that's one thing that we will, definitely point out as we're going through this. The other thing off the top here that I want to point out, and we'll see it again later, is our debt service looks like it's gone up significantly, or the actual spend, I'm sorry, back in 21-22 was significant. Part of that is because when the public, thankfully, approved the capital project for Dergy, that $32.8 million, we had that reserve money that was allocated, that $5 million, and this is how we have to account for it on our books. So that's why 21-22 actual is quite a bit higher than what we're looking at for the 22-23 budget. The 23-24 budget is impacted because of how we have to account for leases, which we can talk a little bit more about as we move through the presentation here. So the overall increase is not being seen with a decrease in some of those other budget codes yet, because we haven't gotten to those areas of the budget. So we'll keep moving through here and look at our debt service overall. So when you take a look at our debt service, and I know the facilities committee has looked at this slide over and over again, really the funding the future, or funding improvements in building the future, that phase 1 is not reflected in this debt schedule yet, because we're utilizing that $5 million in reserves for the planning stage, and we're currently in the design phase of that building. So that's not impacted here, but what I do want to point out is when you look at this debt schedule, the black subtotal for construction is pretty stable until you get out to 26-27, and you see a potential drop because we have debt falling off the previous year. And this is where we're talking about those continuous phases of capital projects and making sure that we have something to fill that when it comes off. So when you look at that 26-27 year, we will be adding the Durkee project on at that point to maintain that total line to be stable, up more around that 5.8 million. This has an impact on our tax cap levy and other factors. Now remember, our capital projects are aided. So we have to book on the expense side the payment for those capital projects, and then we get the aid back on the revenue side, similar to what we were talking about with transportation, or should have been talking about with the transportation aid. So that gets a little bit confusing when we're talking about local share and how that impact is. So when you're taking a look at our capital projects, if you think about the aid ratio ranges a little bit and how much is aidable, which is another discussion we had with the board quite a bit, and why we went back out with the Durkee project that we went out with was to make sure we were maximizing aid. If you take like the $100,000 project that we build into our budget, which we'll talk about as well, that project, when we go out to do that work, we get approximately $87,000 back in aid. So that's a pretty good deal that we're spending $13,000 of local share money to do $100,000 worth of work, I think. But I think that that's an area where we need to be talking more about it, especially as we're talking about the next capital project and the impact, and just making sure people are understanding what that is all about. So we know we've gone out with the Durkee project. We're in the design phase. I think we're pretty comfortable with the work that's going to happen there, so I'm not going to go through that tonight. But I do want to point out the construction for that Durkee project that was approved last May isn't even scheduled to begin, if we're able to stay on track, until the 24-25 school year. In addition, that project being closed out is not until a phased closeout will be that 25 to 27, which if you notice matches up with when that debt falls off, because what we'll do in the meantime is right now we're using reserve funds that we allocated, and then we'll do a short-term borrowing to get us through until we complete that project. Then once the project is complete is when we go out to bond that project that then goes into this schedule for our long-term plan. Any questions about any of that? That was a lot of information. And on the bottom of this, you'll see our buses where we're doing a similar thing. We talked about the buses are a 5-year, we go out for debt on those for 5 years, and the aid comes back for 5 years. And again, you'll see the things that we're projecting out to try to stay on a stable schedule. Now here you do see when the total bottom line of our buses a little bit of an increase. That's impacted by the fact that we went back to buying those full chassis buses versus the van type buses that we talked about previously. And in addition to that, we're trying to get our fleet on a newer schedule. If you remember, our internal auditors talked to us about that at the audit committee meeting. We're either paying to maintain them or we're paying to buy new buses. So it's a balance, and we're still working through that as well. Did I get everything on that too? All right, so here is the detail. This is where we're talking a little bit about the specifics. Some of these lines have fund balance in them. We have benefits in here as well. Some of our benefit line also has fund balance in it to help create that amount of money that we don't want to spend that we were talking about when we went over the fund balance projection. A couple of things to point out here. Health insurance, we're projecting from the healthcare consortium that the district moved into a few years ago, so there's a number of us, I have 30 plus districts I believe at this point, that are in the same healthcare consortium. And that shows us the ability to stabilize. So if you remember when we were self-insured, we had ebbs and flows in regards to claims and how we were handling those. Because there's stability in numbers, we now can just book a flat amount for our health insurance and an increase in it for our health insurance. And this is a line that we do carry some fund balance in, but if you think about people coming on and off payroll, hiring staff, we do need some fund balance there to help and prepare for if we do have individual leave, family come on. There's quite a bit of a swing there in regards to the cost of the district. So all the health benefits, we're looking at that. Of course, ERS, TRS, the retirement contribution that has to be paid in order for that person to draw the retirement from the retirement system. This isn't we don't pay for our retirees in regards to what they're getting in their benefit when they retire, but in regards to those charges. And those rates are statewide and get pushed out to us. ERS is our support staff, mainly CSEA, some VESPA people That is going up a little bit from 11.6 to 13.1, plus that's based on the salaries that are always going up as well. So we need to make sure we're budgeting appropriately for that. And TRS rate may come down a little bit. This year it ended up being 10.3. Right now we have a projection of either 9.5 to 10, somewhere in that range. But remember, the salaries are going up with that as well. So we definitely don't want to decrease that line. And that's another area where if we have a little bit of fund balance, it works out okay. Workers' comp, we have that number in already, so that's a good thing. It does continue to go up. That's another area we're working at in the district office between HR and us in regards to forms and communicating with employees and making sure we're capturing information, and then of course trying to make sure we're mitigating and keeping people safe, which is our goal. Any questions? I think I hit all of the highlights. So just as a reminder, we will be back with a second conversation with both of these parts of the budget that we went over tonight at our next meeting, and then we'll go on to the next. So you get to see them twice. We did have a fair amount of people participating, different amounts for different parts of the budget from our community, which was nice. So we've completed obviously that portion of our budget planning for these for the transportation part of the budget.
Thank you, Kim. Moving on to the next part of the agenda, new business. Okay. Resolved that the Board of Education approve the resolution for the preliminary amendment to the Smart Schools Investment Plan pursuant to the attached. Can I have a motion, please? Shelley first.
Second.
Second, Wayne. Any questions or discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 8-0. Resolved that Timothy Lynch be appointed to serve as the school district central treasurer, extra class student activity accounts, and that Emily Hayes serve as deputy central treasurer in his absence without additional compensation. Can I have a motion, please? Shelley first.
Second.
Second, Matt. Any questions or discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 8-0. Item C, resolved that the Board of Education approve the OCM BOCES copy release agreement pursuant to the attached. Can I have a motion, please?
Move.
Wayne first, Shelley second. Any questions or discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 8-0. Item D, resolved that the Board of Education approve the disposal of surplus equipment and instructional materials pursuant to the attached. Can I have a motion, please? Did Denise first? Second, Shelley. Any questions or discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 8-0. We've moved on to the next portion of the agenda, board roundtable. Does anyone have anything before we just talk a little bit about the data and how we want to have that presented? Does anyone have anything? Okay, so Joe and I were talking, it came up about our data retreat scheduled for January 30th, and just to help give Danielle some direction, to help us so it's a really productive evening, you know, what types of things, you know, we want to look at, how do we want her to present it to us so it makes sense, and we don't have to have an in-depth conversation with this tonight. It's just to plant the seed, you know, start thinking about that, and we can discuss it at our meeting after Christmas break, and then that will give Danielle a few weeks to work on that presentation. I know that we haven't gotten, you know, a formal presentation on where our students ended last year. I know that there's something in the Friday letter to the database, but, you know, what do we want going forward? You know, Danielle's clicking around and showing us a lot of awesome stuff, but, you know, as for remembering what the presentation was, how we're going to go back for those who are here next year, looking at the previous year's stuff. So these are the types of things we want to be thinking about for where we have our next board roundtable discussion on this topic. I don't know if anyone has some ideas now that they want to throw out there, you know, to get Danielle thinking, you know, for the end of January. We want to hold.
So just as some initial thoughts, would like to learn a little from the district's perspective, your process and how you examine and look at data. You know, there are a variety of different approaches of doing that, so would love to gain some insight about your approach and how, and looking through your lens. I do think, thinking about the data points, it'd be important to tie and maybe have a prioritized list of data points that are tied to our goals as a board. Chronic absenteeism being one of them. I'd love to explore that more deeply. So that's just an initial thought, Danielle, to examine that, and you know, I'll have to do some exploring over the holidays of other areas moving forward. So those are some initial thoughts. Thank you.
That's all I have for roundtable. I don't know if anyone else has anything they want to add to that tonight, or they want to hold it till January, think about it, maybe look at the data dashboard a little bit and see what type of information is there, reviewing our goals. The equity report last time was very, very good and thorough. You know, but just getting like a record week for academics, where our kids are, you know, last year where they are quarterly, so we can see that progression throughout the year. I don't know, there's so much stuff there, but I think tying it to the goals absolutely is what we need to be doing. Anything else, or can we move on? Okay. Resolve the Board of Education enter into executive session to discuss the employment history of a particular person or corporation, or the medical, financial, or credit history of a particular person or corporation, or matters leading to the appointment, employment, promotion, demotion, discipline, suspension, dismissal, or removal of a particular person or corporation. Can I have a motion, please? Wayne first. Second, Denise. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 8-0. So we can take 5 minutes and then we will meet in the other room. Thank you.